Go. Welcome everyone. This is the Jenkins Platform SIG meeting, and today we're on March 24, 2026. And around the very small table today we have Mark Waite and myself, Bruno Verstein. On the agenda, we have quite a lot of subjects, but that should be covered pretty easily and fast. Windows MSI installer signing certificate, Java 17, 21, and 25 update, then the LTS updates, the container image updates for the Jenkins controllers, the agents also. We'll talk about RISC-V, which has been a hobby of mine for quite a few years now. And we'll talk about the work in progress on images. And we'll finish, if we still have time, talking about today's infra meeting because there were several notable items. Mark, is there any other subject you would like to address today?
No other topics from me.
So, first subject, I'm afraid it's for you, Mark, because it's just the two of us and you know much more than I do on the subject. I'm not there to point fingers at anyone, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, we have to deal with the certificate renewal for the MSI Jenkins packages on Windows. So I assume that you started or you will be about
I
to
have
start
I have
something.
started, and
Oh,
we're
great.
now about 2 months away from the expiration date. We want it to be included in the, we would really like it to be included in the 2.551.1 release April 15, but if we had to, we could slide it out and make it the .2 release in mid-May. So
Oh,
it would be closer to the edge than I'd like if it happens in the .2, but we'll make progress and go forward. I've got more to do, but I'm not feeling panicked yet.
time will come. Or not. Thank you so much, Mark. So Java 17 and 21 status update. The Java 17 end of life proposal, that's an old story, but nonetheless, the date that was chosen back then is next week. So, I think that won't change anything for people still running Java 17, Mark. They already have the red banner or something telling them that they have to think of switching to a newer JDK, or will it change anything in the UI? I'm not so sure.
It won't change anything in the UI. If they're running weekly, they've already switched to 21 because
Yeah.
weekly stopped supporting it a long time ago. If they're running LTS, they'll continue to get it and and that's just the way it is. And the next LTS upgrade won't work on Java 17. It absolutely will stop supporting Java 17.
Yeah, and if they are running an old version, old with quotes, version of Jenkins still supporting Java 17, it will still work just displaying this banner, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so people, please think of upgrading your Jenkins LTS version or even weekly and use JDK 21 or
Yeah.
25. It's not even an adventure, it has been working for quite a while. And I heard today that even the CI Jenkins IO is running on JDK 25.
That's
So you
correct.
should not be afraid. It
No,
should work.
it runs just fine.
Thank you, Mark. Speaking of Java 25, it's been a while. It has been released last September. And Mark, I can see that, I don't know if it's you, but I still can see some more plugins migrating to JDK 25. And we are almost to 400 plugins now that I detected. If the page is okay to display. Okay, come on, you can do it. Well, well, well. It's a little bit too big. Sorry, Mark. I have a brand new mouse with a very sensitive wheel, so I just can't. Yeah, so we're at between 350 and 380 using JDK 25, and it's still growing. So whoever did that, thank you so much, Mark. It may be you, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
It is. It's good. And that's good organic growth.
Yeah. And as a user, if you think that you're done because you switched to Java JDK 25, well, see you 3 years from now. Because 3 years from now, you have to switch to the next LTS. So it should be, yeah, in March 2029, users will be warned that Java 25 will be reaching its end of support in the Jenkins project, not in the Xamarin or Oracle or whatever, in the Jenkins project. Mark, I
Right.
never can remember which version will we be running at that time.
29. So
29 already. Yeah,
they roll a new one roll an LTS every 4 versions currently.
got it. Thank you, Mark. And as I
Hmm.
was saying earlier, the Jenkins controller for the infra now are running JDK 25. Whew, pretty cool. Thank you. Now, for the LTS update, so last one was released, when was it? Last week or the week before? I think it was last week. And it was a security. Yes, of course, it was last week because it was the security release. It happened on a Wednesday and not on a Tuesday. So we had a security release for the LTS and also for the weekly, of course. I saw a discussion about the next LTS baseline. And I think that almost everybody was okay with the next one being the 555, like
Right.
the prefix in the movies when you call somebody on the phone, the 555. Why not? And so, 3 weeks from now, yeah, 3 weeks from now, we have the next LTS. So on April 15, 2026. And that will be the first LTS not running anymore with JDK 17. We'll have to use JDK 21. That's pretty cool. Once again, Shalini proposed to be the release lead. Thank you so much for that. Maybe even without the help of Chris this time.
No, Chris volunteered, and I'm grateful that Chris did
Yeah,
volunteer. It's best for Shalini that help is there. So Chris, it's much appreciated that Chris is willing to assist.
yeah, for Shalini or anyone starting with that. It takes some time to get
Right.
accustomed to that and be proficient. Yeah.
Yeah, the release process for an LTS is we've got a nice checklist, but the checklist assumes you're an expert, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
it
somehow,
just
yeah.
assumes you're an expert. You've been through that, I've been through it,
I
but
could
it
testify.
really
I'm not
does
an expert
fundamentally
and
assumes you're an expert.
yeah, you're right. Now, Mark, again for you, because we still, Salman is there. Hello, Salman. Um, Spring Security 7 and Spring Framework 7. I saw some PRs and discussion in my mailbox this week and maybe the week before. It should be available from next week, but
Yes,
what does
actually,
it?
it's already available yesterday.
Because we're, already, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're at 556. So it's intentionally chosen to not be in the next LTS baseline, but it's very important, and we're very interested in results from users running that LTS baseline. I ran all the Jenkins tests, the Jenkins core tests. I ran the plugin bill of materials tests. I ran the acceptance test harness tests. They all pass. That's great. That's really wonderful. That's certainly necessary, but my worry is it may not be sufficient. There may still be surprises hiding behind Spring Security 7 and Spring
Uh-huh.
Framework 7. So, weekly users, I'm watching the bug reports very carefully to see if there's any bug report. I just found a bug today. Thought it might be due to this. Turns out it wasn't. It was something completely different. But I've now switched to running weekly in my test environment because of how much I want to be sure that this is good for our users. And it's important to note, I guess I should have noted in the text, Spring Security 6 end of life or end of public support is June 30th, 2026.
Oh.
So Spring Security end of public support June 30th means that there will be a brief period between the end of June and the new LTS release mid-July, where we will be running a version of Spring that is officially not publicly supported by the Spring project.
Uh, didn't we already have that kind of behavior when we switched to Spring Security 6? Maybe it was last
We
year or the
we
year
did.
before?
We had the same thing when we did the Spring Security 6 upgrade. There was a relatively small window where where we were running something that the Spring project was no longer publicly supporting. And we accepted the risk at the time. And Daniel Beck
Mhm.
and I had a conversation in a mailing list, and he says, "Hey, that's the same. And if we had to, we could accelerate the LTS release in July or do other things if there were really something disastrous in Spring 6."
Okay, I'm just surprised that the Spring Security 6.x didn't last that long. I didn't follow the release notes and so on. I don't know why they switched to 7 and why we have to switch with them. Um, any insight on that, Mark?
Yeah, they need to move ahead, and they have moved ahead, and they've got an entire framework, right? That's working, and they certainly do not want to have to support multiple versions of their framework for an extended period.
Mm,
They have the same challenge Jenkins does in the sense of we don't really want to support more than two JDKs at any one time, right? That's already a heavy load for us, and during this period
it
while
is.
we're supporting three, it's extra dangerous and costs us time.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Now, on the container image updates for the Jenkins controller, so like I said earlier, we had the security release for the LTS last week. I haven't seen any bad comments on this one so far. And for the weekly releases, we had two, the latest one being from today. So the significant change to me is the Spring Framework v7 that we just talked about. And the other thing, which is not that important, but it is to me, is the add of the Linux RISC-V 64 platform to Debian images. So for the Jenkins controller and for the agents, we'll talk about that maybe in a few minutes because I have another subject about that. And also the usual suspect, the dependency updates for Debian, Red Hat, and release drafter, which isn't anything for the end user, by the way, of course. Now, we had three new releases for the SSH agent. The breaking change is that the default JDK is now 21. Thank you, Hervé, for that. And that's why we had to change the version to 8.00. Um, we had a few dependency updates, the Git version for Windows, Debian Trixie Linux, and also Linux RISC-V 64 to Debian images. By the way, thank you, Mark, for reviewing those PRs and helping to get them merged.
And
Um,
congratulations to you on successfully getting RISC-V support into
yeah,
the product. Well done.
don't know why it brings me joy. Maybe because that's an open ISA. A long time ago, I thought that the hardware also was open hardware. That's not the case, at least for most of the RISC-V cores. They are not open hardware. Some are, some not. But nonetheless, it's still the most open platform to me. So that's maybe why that's so interesting. And as you may remember, Mike, I had a personal goal. Last year, I wanted RISC-V to be a first-class citizen for Jenkins. But due to certain circumstances, I was not able to fulfill that dream of mine. But
Hmm?
fortunately, things have moved, and now we have RISC-V. And you know what changed is that one user asked us for a RISC-V Docker image. That's what changed everything. I thought I was the only one obsessed with that nobody cared. But at least one user, one Jenkins user, was asking for that. So thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't remember your GitHub handle, but thank you for that because thanks to you, we now have controller, SSH agent, and agent for RISC-V. Oh, don't need much to be happy. Now, the work in progress on images. So for the controller, it's the same that 2 weeks ago, I haven't seen any new PR, draft PR. For the Docker agent, I think that's the same PR that have been open for quite a week. Nothing urgent, nothing really super important to be merged as soon as possible. That's not the case. So Hervé mostly still running on running each dedicated taste in parallel and also trying to get rid of Windows 1809 and switch to Windows 2025. Um, Before moving to the today's infra meeting, the PRs regarding RISC-V were accepted, and the compromise, I would say, or the common ground was that okay, but it's a problem that we don't have a RISC-V machine to test. So we'll use QEMU, for example, but it's not exempt of bugs, QEMU. But for the time being, that's good enough. Nonetheless, I'm working on getting us two RISC-V machines that we could have as agents, thanks to the RISE project. I never can remember the significance of the RISE acronym is risk something, risk 5, maybe software ecosystem project. And I have a meeting just after this one to discuss that with somebody from the RISE project. That would be cool because the experience I have with RISC-V and maybe with other architectures is that using cross-compiling is okay-ish. Using QEMU is okay-ish until it's not. There will be a quirk somewhere, and the binary that you will have with a real RISC-V machine will not be exactly the same as the one you would have with QEMU sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. So it's way better if we can test what we are producing and delivering to end users on real machines. Maybe more on that 2 weeks from now. We'll see. And once again, nobody asked for it, but nonetheless, it would be cool to have RISC-V agents. Mark, from today's infra meeting, we already told about the weekly released today with a major change, a new spring version. It doesn't change much, or it should not change much for the end users, or we discover maybe bugs along the way, or differences. Is there anything that plugin developers should be aware of because of this change, or
No,
no?
well, there was in the testing notes there were one or two changes that were needed in Jenkins core, but and those were noted as being needed also in one or two proprietary CloudBees plugins, but nothing dramatic, and the notes are there. Now, part of me is still worried because we haven't yet upgraded to Jakarta Servlet 6.1, and that's a much bigger change apparently. But Spring Framework 7 works even though we haven't upgraded to Jakarta Servlet 6.1. So
Oh,
I'm fine with things as they are right now and waiting for test results, testing myself as well.
okay. Thank you, Mark. The two last subjects I had noted were that Mark, you will be the controller of ceremonies for the CityCon next month. No, not next month, in May, in Minnesota. That's pretty cool.
You said, I'm charmed by your use of the word controller of ceremonies.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's funny, right?
no. Yeah, it would not be understood in English at all. It's master of ceremonies. It's simplest just to call it MC. But I'm charmed by the use because we don't use the word master in Jenkins at
Yeah, that's
all,
why.
and so that well done, very nicely done. And
Oh,
you could
thank
just
you,
say
somebody. Sorry.
list it as MC, as that way you're not
Yeah.
putting the word master into our notes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you, Mark. And that's where our the people we nominated for the Jenkins MVP security
right,
expert and so on will be announced. The winners will be announced, maybe even by you, or you will be there at least when the
right.
results. Okay,
CDF awards will be announced there, including
two.
the Jenkins awards. Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. I saw that one time when we were in Texas in 2022, and that was cool being there for real during the announcement. Nice. Now, for people loving new software, there is something about providing Maven for pre-release templates on ci.jenkins.io. You know how much I love to use unfinished software like JDK 21 or 25 when it was early access. So
Hmm.
why not use Maven for pre-release? I even don't know what it brings, what makes it such an important really that they had to change the first number. But yeah, anyhow, this could be available someday for the Jenkins use. Cool. Anything else that I forgot to talk about today?
Nothing else for me. Nope.
Thank you so much for being there. The recording should be available from 24 to 48 hours, and 2 weeks from now, we may see a slight change in the way that this meeting is handled. We'll maybe have an expert for some time taking the lead of this meeting. So, see you soon, and until then, have fun with Jenkins. Bye bye.